Okay, it looks like it's time to get started. Okay, so thank you everyone for stopping by today. My name is Isaac, and I'll be the lead instructor for this lecture. And today's topic is going to be Front-End Foundations Part 2. So what that means is this lecture will cover the second half of the Front-End Foundations curriculum. So if you're in that section, this is the lecture for you. A couple things to mention before we get started today. The first one being is we're going to stop periodically throughout this lecture to open the floor for questions. So if you do have questions come up along the way, we just ask that you wait until those designated times to ask them. Another thing to mention is that we're recording this lecture. So once we're done here, we're going to be posting it on our YouTube channel. We're going to be making that link available to you in your student dashboard. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off by talking about the web technologies we're going to be learning about today. And there's going to be two primary ones we're focusing on. The first one is going to be jQuery, and the second one is going to be Bootstrap. So let's go ahead and go over each of those. So we'll start with jQuery, and you can find the official docs for jQuery by going to jQuery.com. Okay, and jQuery is a lightweight JavaScript library, which basically takes a bunch of our traditional JavaScript approaches and compresses them into simple methods. Okay, so you'll notice if I look at the API docs here, it just references a bunch of JavaScript methods, right? Or in our case, jQuery methods. And these are going to all, run different operations. But in a nutshell, it's going to allow us to do what it says right here, write less, do more, right? So instead of having to write vanilla JavaScript for every single operation, we can actually use a lot of jQuery and minimize our code base really by a lot. So as well as jQuery, we're also going to be learning about Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is a design framework for our web page, okay? And so Bootstrap is a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, and so what they've done is they've created this design library which has a bunch of pre-built components which basically allows you to copy and paste them into your own app. And so you don't really have to worry about the design UI. They already have it pretty much taken care of for you. You just download it and insert it into your app as wanted. Okay, and so an example of Bootstrap would be like the website we're looking at now. This was all made using Bootstrap, okay? And so if you're a programmer that doesn't have much time for design or maybe doesn't like design, right, either or, Bootstrap or another design framework are very handy for these reasons. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off by navigating to our desktop. And then I'm going to create a base project. I'll go ahead and call it Front-End Foundations. Oops, looks like a V there. Let's get rid of that. Let's do Front-End Foundations. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up Front-End Foundations inside of Visual Studio. Okay, so let's go ahead and open that up. Okay, let's see here. From here, we need to start off by creating an HTML document. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that in my root directory, and I'll call it an index.html. Okay, and then from here, we can see, that's been populated right here, right? Okay, so next, we can go ahead and we can write the basic HTML skeleton on the doc here. So I'm going to start with the parent element, and then we'll do the head element, and then we'll do a title element, okay? And we'll just do Front-End Foundations. Okay, then from here we'll do a body element. And again, this is where all of our visible content is. So for now, let's just do simple hello world, okay? So we save all, and let's go ahead and copy the path of the index here, and head back to our browser, okay? And let's just paste that in like so. Okay. And as you can see, it's rendering that markup, no problems, right? Okay, so now we know that that's working. The next step is we need to bring in jQuery, okay? So jQuery is gonna be a local installation, okay? That means we're not gonna install it on our machine. We're gonna install it in our local project here, okay? And so I'm gonna use the Bower package manager to do that. And if you don't have Bower, you can get it by going to get Bower.io. okay? Or an alternative is we can get what's called a jQuery CDN. And that makes it to where we don't have to use a package manager, we just reference it within the cloud, basically. So what I'm gonna do is, if we go to get started with Bootstrap, we can see that they provide a CDN for jQuery, okay? And so I'm just gonna copy that, and I'm gonna paste it right at the bottom of my body here, okay? And now I'm referencing that script, and that's gonna be loaded in, okay? So if we save all, and we go back to front-end foundations, let's go ahead and open up our network. And from here, we can go and refresh, and we can see that it is loading in jQuery, okay? So now we can use all of these jQuery methods, okay? So next, we need a script file where we can write our custom jQuery code. So I'm just going to create, right in our root, an app.js file, okay? And from there, I'm going to link it up here in my HTML doc, and I'll have the source point to the app.js file, right? So we'll say app.js, and we'll save all. And if we refresh one more time, we can see that. Let's see here. Oh, looks like my equal sign never quite made it there. Let's try that again. So we refresh. Okay, so as we can see, we got our HTML doc, we got the jQuery library, and we got our custom app.js script, right? Okay, so now we know all that's working. Let's head over to app.js and let's start writing some jQuery code. Okay, and the first thing you need to know about jQuery is the jQuery library symbol is the $sign. Okay, so whenever you see this, that means they're referencing jQuery, the library. And from here, we have access to a bunch of different methods which we can use by utilizing the jQuery library symbol, okay? And so you can view it very much like a selector in a way of targeting elements, okay? So let's say, for example, each time that the browser loads in, we are going to use what's called the ready method to where we will run a callback function whenever the document has loaded in, okay? So how we could do this is we could say bling, and then we could pass in the document, okay? That's what we're selecting, okay? And then we could use the ready method, okay? And this is going to accept a callback function, at which time we can console log document is ready, okay? So from here, we save all, and we go to our console here, and we refresh. We can see that it lets us know that the document is ready, okay? And so why is this important? Well, because jQuery relies on the document, okay, because we don't want to execute jQuery before it's loaded in, okay? So we always want to run this bit of script and then run our jQuery code inside here, okay? So let's say, for example, we want to target one element and manipulate it using jQuery, okay? And so let's go ahead and within the body here, let's assign an ID to our element here. We'll call it greeting. Okay, and then in our app.js, let's say whenever the browser loads in, we want to then change the color of that element by targeting it by its ID. Okay, so how we could do this is I'll create a variable and I'll call this greeting, and I'll make it equal to bling, and then I'll use a hashtag to select the greeting element with an ID of greeting, okay? And then from here, I can go ahead and I can apply a CSS style. So I can say greeting.css, okay? And I'll pass in color red, okay? So now when the browser loads in, it will assign using the selector element node to this variable, and then we'll use the CSS method. Remember, like I talked about, jQuery is all about using methods to manipulate and update the actual elements. Okay, so let's save all. Let's refresh. Okay, and we can see that when the browser loaded in, it then changed the color of that element to red. And you also notice that we don't have any CSS style sheets around, right? Okay, so this is really cool, right? So we're able to style and manipulate styles using jQuery. And this is one of the most common things you're gonna actually see jQuery used for is within design libraries like Bootstrap. They use jQuery because it's so good at manipulating the styles of specific elements, okay? Although it can be used for other things, jQuery is a very large library. Design implementations tend to be the most common, at least these days. Okay, so now let's explore if we have a group of elements, how we can target all those elements, instead of just targeting one individual element. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my ID here, and let's say I have an H1. We'll say start. We'll do H2. We'll say middle, and we'll do an H3, and we will say end. Okay, so you notice all three of these are different element types. All right, and so we can group them all together using a class. Okay, so I'll go ahead and say class, and we will just say maybe color blue. Okay, so from here we can go ahead and we can assign that same class to all the other elements we want to apply that style to. And then we'll go ahead and get rid of our first scenario here. And we'll go ahead and start by targeting all those elements. Okay, so we'll say let, and I'll say element group equals, and then we'll use our bling symbol, and then we'll say dot color blue. Okay, and then from here we can say element group dot CSS, and we can change the color to blue. Okay, and as you can see, that way we don't have to create, a different variable for each element and change 3 different styles, right? We just change the whole group all together. Okay, so let's test this out. Save all, and we refresh in our browser. And let's see here. Well, that didn't work. Let's see. Doesn't seem to be picking up on our color blue here. Oh, I think I know why. Because I put a W at the end of this blue. Yeah, so I don't think it's going to accept that. Let's try again. Okay, there we go. So as we can see, when the browser loads in, it immediately identifies that group, right? Assigns it to the element group variable, and then uses the CSS method to update the style of that group. Okay, so depending on your situation, maybe you want to target one element, manipulate its styles, or maybe target a group. That really just comes down to your particular scenario. But as you can see, you definitely have options with jQuery. Okay, so now we've learned how we can target elements in jQuery. Let's talk about jQuery events. Okay, and how we can run events using jQuery. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's say we have a input and a button. And the idea is we're going to input a greeting, and when we click the button, it will then console log that greeting. Okay, and we're going to do all this using jQuery. So first step is we create the input, and let's give this input an ID, and we'll call this input my input. Okay, right below it, we'll go ahead and we'll set up the button. And this button will also have an ID, and we'll call this my button. Okay, so now using these IDs, we can set up what's called event listeners using jQuery. And those are going to run callback functions in response to specific browser events. Okay, so I'm going to come inside our document load code, and I'm going to start by targeting the button element. I'm going to say my button equals bling hashtag my button. Then we'll do the same thing for my input hashtag my input. Okay, so now we've got those element nodes assigned to variables. What we can do from here is we can add the click event listener to the button. Okay, so we'll say my button dot click. And then we're going to pass in this callback function, which will run when that element is clicked. And then from here, we can console log the value from the input by saying console.log. And we will throw in my input dot val invoke. Okay, and the val is a method for extracting the element's value. Okay, so now we've got that set up. Let's go ahead and test out our event in the browser. Okay, so we'll pass in our greeting here. I'll just say hello world and submit. And as you can see, it takes the value from the input and it outputs it here to the browser console, right? Okay, and so we could change up the greeting if we wanted. We could say, hey there, submit, and we can see it's dynamic, right? It's grabbing that value and putting it here. Okay, and so that's how you can set up jQuery event, but you're not limited to just click events, right? You can do drag events, on close events, on open, right? I mean, they really cover the full spectrum. So feel free to reference their docs in regards to all the different events you can run, but this will get you started in the right direction. Okay, so before we move on to Bootstrap, let's go ahead and open up the floor and let's see if anyone has any questions over what we've gone over so far. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have questions, feel free to ask those now. Okay, I don't hear anyone, so I'm assuming we're all good today. Let's go ahead and move forward, and we'll open the floor up in a little bit, see if anyone has questions a little bit later down the line then. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move on to the topic of Bootstrap. Okay, so as we mentioned before, Bootstrap is a design library, and Bootstrap uses a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to create a pre-built starter kit, if you will, for different parts of a web page, which allow you to quickly scaffold it together rather than having to style everything from the ground up. Okay, so to get started with Bootstrap, we need to bring in these CDNs. First, one for the styles, the static styles, the CSS, and then another for the JavaScript, right, the actual interactions. Okay, so let's go and copy these style sheet, and let's go to our index document. And then right below the title, I'm going to paste in the link for the style sheet. Okay, and now we need to paste in the specific libraries that are needed to run Bootstrap. Okay, so you'll notice the first one is jQuery. Okay, like I said, it's very common to use in these design libraries because it's so good at manipulating, elements in our document. Okay, but as well as jQuery, we also are bringing in what's called Popper.js. Popper.js just allows for specific animations, and then we've got the core Bootstrap.js library, which allows for everything else. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll copy this entire thing, and we'll just paste all of those right above our app.js. Okay, there we go. Okay, and now we can throw in a simple little note here, letting us know that these are our app scripts. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's save all, and let's check our network and refresh. Okay, and as you can see, everything loaded in successfully, right? And you also notice even the styles of our input and button immediately updated, right? Now, we can tell that the library's, being executed. So now let's go ahead and let's go over the different parts of Bootstrap. So first, let's go ahead and start with layout. Okay, so Bootstrap allows you to define layouts using grid containers. Okay, and grid containers are just broken up sections of the page, which allow us to style things in an organized fashion, right? And so let's just go ahead and let's reference our chart here and see that they let you know at what pixel width specific grid sizes are applied. So you can even make responsive layouts if need be. Okay, so let's just take this first example here. We'll copy with our clipboard, And let's paste that right on in the body here. And let's save all. And let's refresh our browser. And we can see that it's set up these elements in a brick-like structure, right? It's like a mason-like structure where you've got, almost like bricks. And you can see that as I expand and shrink this, right, those actually are responsive to the site of the page, right? They're not static, okay? And so this is how you can make your own grid system, and you can stack content on top of each other and, just use these different column sizes to accomplish that. Okay, and as well as grid system, we got components, okay? And components are just all the different parts of a web page, okay? So as you can see, they offer us an alert component here, which, as you can see, is just, alerts, they just give us some information, whether it's success, message, error, something like that, right? So there's nothing really too much to that. We got things like badges, right? These are similar to something you'd see in Facebook or Twitter, right? You've got 3 messages or whatever else, right? So, you can use those in there. Let's go ahead and copy that and let's try it out in our browser. Okay, so get rid of our grid system, and we'll go ahead and paste that on in our body. And then we'll refresh. And as you can see, right out of the box, it's working, right? All I had to do was link up Bootstrap, and it already took care of all the styling for these little badges for me, okay? As well as badges, we got breadcrumbs, which, just kind of keep track of where where you've been in the navigation. As well as that, we've got buttons, and buttons, are pretty self-explanatory, right? They're ways of, selecting content or running some specific operations. And what's really nice is they don't only give you, solid buttons, but they also give you, outline buttons, large, small, block level. Really, I mean, they cover all your bases pretty much. So you don't really have to do any of the styling yourself. So let's just go ahead and copy maybe these line buttons here and, paste them on in our body and see them, render in our browser. Okay, so we save all and we refresh. We can see that right out of the box, these are all working, right? And they even have nice little transitions, right, as we hover, the fade and all that, okay? So next, we have button groups, okay? And these are pretty self-explanatory. Basically, if you don't want any, space between your buttons, you want them all to, sit really nice and snug next to each other. Something like paginating through results or, something of that nature, you would use a button group. Okay, so let's just go ahead and copy this one and we paste it on in our browser. And then let's save all and let's refresh here. Okay, and as you can see, we got a nice little button group. Next, we have cards. Okay, and cards just, are little information dialogues, right? And really nice for things like product descriptions and other, other things, because you can combine them with a picture and it really, add information to the mix. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take this, simple card here and let's paste it on in and let's render it in our browser. So we refresh and we can see that again, it automatically just works, right? We didn't have to mess with any styles and we have this nice ready to go card. All right, next we got carousel, okay? And we've all seen these, right? They have, pictures, images, they allow you to slide, a lot of times used for advertising purposes, things of that nature. So you just really come in here and, select the options you want and get it up and running. Okay, next we have collapsible, which is just when we have, hidden content, right? And we use a link to render it. So if we want something like that, we could just, copy that. And we could paste it on in our browser like so. Okay, so from here we could save all. And we could refresh our browser. Okay, as you can see, we have a nice little transition there using this collapsible. Okay, and again, this is one of those that has, a lot of different options here, right? So you can really get fancy if you really want that kind of operation going, okay? Next, we have drop downs, okay? And we've all seen these, right? These are very common for menus and things of that nature. So if you drop down, you'll just come and drop it in like so. So we'll copy that, and let's run that in our browser. So we save all and refresh, and just like that, we have a drop down ready to go. Okay, moving right along, let's check out their forms. Okay, so they've got simple forms such as these, but then they've also got really complex forms, right, where we can do everything from text areas to file uploads, small forms, large forms, inline forms, right? Again, they really cover all your bases. So let's go ahead and let's just copy this simple login form here, and let's paste it on in, and let's save all, and let's run that in our browser. Okay, and as you can see, ready to go is this little login form, right? And I didn't have to think about any of that. I just copy and pasted and maybe changed up a bit of the context. But for the most part, this is really kind of a plug and play framework. Okay, next we've got input groups. Okay, these would be found more than likely inside a form, but they allow you to add a little bit more context to your inputs rather than just the traditional placeholder. As you can see on the sides of the inputs, we got a little bit more personality, if you will. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy these, and let's paste them on in our browser, and let's save all, and let's go to refresh. Okay, and as we can see, we have nice little input groups. Next, we have a Jumbotron. Okay, and Jumbotrons, anytime you want to attract information to a specific message or product or something else, right? So let's just go ahead and let's paste in the Jumbotron, and let's see that in action. Okay, so we refresh, as we can see, a nice big banner, kind of hard to miss, and really it captures the attention of the end user. Moving right along, we have list groups, right? And these are great if you're iterating through list of data, right? Particularly if it's like an unknown length, and you could just, create nice little separators via the light border here. As you can see, we got, simple lists, but we also got, more menu-like lists, right? Links, and so you really can just come in here and, pick whichever ones that, make most sense to your particular project. Okay, so let's just take this basic example here, and let's plug it right in, and let's save all, and let's refresh our browser. As you can see, we got a nice little list. Moving right along, we have modals. Okay, and modals are ways of creating a pop-up similar to an alert that will, dim out the background and focus on the context of the modal. So if we launch it, we can see here, right? We have a modal. Okay. Next, we have a navbar, which it's pretty self-explanatory, right? It's similar to what we see here, except again, it just works out of the box. We don't have to go and try to worry about making all these elements in line and making it look good with our logo, right? And all that thinking, right? We just simply use one of their pre-built examples here. So I'm just going to copy the first one here, and let's plug that in and see how that looks. Okay, so save all, and we refresh. As you can see, looks like I have a little website already, right? I didn't even have to worry about what I would look for. It would just make everything for me. All right, moving right along, we have pagination. Okay, and this is common if maybe you have several hundreds or thousands of results in your database. You're right, you're not going to display all those on the page at once. So maybe you just do 10 at a time, 20 at a time, whatever, and so you would have simple little pagination buttons that are already out of the box, ready to go for you. So you can just plug those in and make them work real nice and easy. Okay, so let's just go ahead and copy this first example and see those rendered in our browser. So we can refresh, and we can see that we are ready to paginate through results. Next, we have popovers. Okay, and these are little descriptors, right? Let us know, what a particular button does, or maybe a warning, success message, right? They could do several different things. So there's just this little animation you see here. Next, we have progress. And I'm sure we've all seen these, right? We can intermittently, increase the progress to, represent the load of a page or a specific operation. We can label it with actual, numbers. We can change colors, and we can even go as far as to make them animated, right? It looks like it's spinning here. Okay. Next, we have scroll spy, which is just what we see here, right? As we scroll down, it changes the content and, adjusts with the actual, actual content being displayed, right? So that's what scroll spy is, and that's how it works. Finally, we've got tooltips, which are very similar to popovers, except we just hover over them, right? We don't have to click on the actual button, and they're much less descriptive, more meant to just be kind of a small tip instead of a description of something. Okay, so as you can see, Bootstrap really covers just all of our bases, and makes it really easy for us to create a great looking website without having to be actual skilled designer or so. So let's go and open up the floor one more time, and let's see if anyone has any last questions. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have questions, feel free to ask those now. Okay, it doesn't sound like anyone has any questions. So if that's the case. Thanks everyone for stopping by. Have a great rest of your day, and happy coding out there.
Yeah, sure.